The bullet tore through the air. 12-year-old Marcus didn't think. He just moved, throwing himself over the little girl in the pink jacket. The screech of tires. Her scream. Then darkness. When he woke up in the hospital, bandaged and broken, he heard the rumble. 200 motorcycles. Hell's Angels. The girl's father stood at his bedside, tears streaming down his tattooed face. "You saved my daughter's life, kid." Marcus tried to smile, but the biker's expression shifted, cold, dangerous. He leaned close and whispered for words that made Marcus's blood run cold. "Welcome to the Hells Angels family. If you're new here, hit that subscribe button right now, because this story will shake your soul in ways you won't expect. To my faithful subscribers who've been here from the beginning, may God continue to bless you abundantly. Before we dive in, let's lift this moment up in prayer. Heavenly Father, I come before you asking for your divine protection over everyone watching right now. Bless their families, Lord. Heal their bodies, provide for their needs, and give them peace that surpasses all understanding. Surround them with your favor, and let your presence be felt in their lives today. In Jesus' mighty name, amen. Now, what you're about to witness isn't just a story about a father's love. It's about a homeless 12-year-old boy who throws himself into gunfire for a biker's little girl, and how that single act of courage ignites a war against the darkness that tried to erase them both. Marcus had learned to read danger the way most kids read comic books, quickly, instinctively, and with his life depending on it. The black sedan moved too slowly down 5th Street, its engine purring like a predator stalking prey. 8 months on Oakland streets had sharpened Marcus's instincts to a razor's edge. He knew the difference between a car looking for parking and a car looking for trouble. This one was hunting. Marcus's fingers tightened around the cardboard sign he used for panhandling. The afternoon sun beat down on his shoulders, but cold dread prickled across his skin. Every muscle in his 12-year-old body tensed, preparing to run. He'd survived this long by being invisible, by disappearing into shadows before danger could find him. The alley behind Rosie's diner was 15 feet away. He could make it in 3 seconds flat. But then he saw her. Lily was crouched on the sidewalk 20 feet away, her tiny fingers fumbling with her shoelaces. Her blonde curls caught the afternoon sunlight, making her look like something fragile and precious in a world that had forgotten what those words meant. She hummed a nursery rhyme. Something about sunshine and rainbows, completely oblivious to the death machine creeping toward her at 5 miles per hour. Marcus's heart hammered against his ribs so hard he thought they might crack. Where was Reaper? His eyes darted frantically to the convenience store entrance. Through the smudged glass window, he could see Lily's father at the counter, his massive back turned to the street, reaching for his wallet to pay for cigarettes and a cherry lollipop Lily had begged for. The mountain of leather and tattoos who terrified grown men was just seconds away, but seconds were all it would take. The sedan's tinted window began to roll down with mechanical precision. Time seemed to fracture. Marcus saw everything with terrible clarity. The sedan was a black Dodge Charger, its license plate obscured by mud. The window descended inch by inch, revealing darkness inside the vehicle. Lily's shoelace slipped through her fingers again, and she giggled in frustration, that innocent sound slicing through Marcus like a knife. Behind the store window, Reaper turned toward the door, his purchase complete, still unaware. Marcus didn't think. Thinking was for people who had the luxury of time, and time had just run out. His legs moved before his brain caught up, his worn sneakers, 2 sizes too big, donated from a church clothing bin, pounding against the concrete. 12 years old and 73 pounds of nothing, charging straight toward the barrel of a gun. Lily. His voice cracked, raw and desperate, tearing from his throat with 8 months of accumulated loneliness and fear behind it. She looked up, confusion spreading across her innocent face like spilled milk. Her green eyes, the same shade as her father's, met his for one brief moment. The window was halfway down now. Metal glinted in the shadows of the sedan's interior, cold and dark and final. A gun barrel, black as a nightmare, angling toward the little girl in the pink jacket. Marcus's lungs burned. His vision tunneled. The world reduced itself to one simple equation. His body between that gun and that little girl. Nothing else existed. Not his fear, not his survival instincts, not the voice in his head screaming that he was going to die. The first shot exploded through the air like thunder splitting the sky. Marcus hit Lily with the full force of his sprint, wrapping his scrawny arms around her small frame and twisting his body to take the impact. They crashed onto the sidewalk together in a tangle of limbs, Marcus's back exposed to the shooter. He curled himself around her, making his body a shield, feeling her heart racing against his chest like a trapped bird. The second shot came a heartbeat later. A white-hot spike of agony that punched through his left shoulder blade and exploded out somewhere near his collarbone. The pain was beyond anything Marcus had ever imagined. Worse than the time he'd broken his arm falling from a fire escape. Worse than the hunger cramps that had doubled him over on empty nights. It felt like someone had driven a burning railroad spike through his body. Subscribe now, because tomorrow, danger won't wait for you to be ready. Lily's screams pierced through the ringing in his ears, high-pitched and terrified. She thrashed beneath him, not understanding why this strange homeless boy had tackled her, not comprehending that the loud bangs were gunshots meant to end her life. Marcus held on tighter, even as warmth spread across his back. Too much warmth, sticky and wrong. The third shot came, sparking off the concrete inches from his head, and Marcus felt the heat of the bullet's passage against his cheek. His vision blurred at the edges, darkness creeping in like spilled ink across paper. Through the haze, he saw Lily's face beneath him, her eyes wide with terror but alive, 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 alive. Her pink jacket was clean, no blood, no wounds. He'd done it. She was safe. The sedan's engine roared to life with sudden urgency. Tires squealed against asphalt, leaving black rubber streaks on 5th Street as the shooter fled. The smell of burning rubber mixed with the copper tang of blood in Marcus's mouth. But he barely registered the sound of the vehicle disappearing into Oakland's afternoon traffic. His body felt heavy, disconnected, like he was sinking into deep water while wearing stones for clothes. Warmth continued spreading across his back, pooling beneath him. Marcus had seen enough violence on the streets to know what that meant. Too much blood. Way too much. His fingers went numb. The edges of his vision sparkled with strange lights that shouldn't exist in the middle of the day. Then came the roar. Not an engine this time. Something primal and full of rage that made Marcus's bones vibrate even through the fog of shock. The convenience store door exploded outward with such force it cracked against the building's brick wall. Heavy boots thundered against the sidewalk. Boom, 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 like war drums announcing violence. Massive hands. Scarred knuckles. Faded prison tattoos spelling words Marcus couldn't focus enough to read, grabbed his shoulders. Fresh agony bloomed where the bullet had torn through tissue and bone. Marcus's scream caught in his throat, coming out as a weak whimper. Lily. Reaper's voice cracked with raw desperation, a sound Marcus had never imagined could come from the intimidating biker. Baby, are you hurt? Talk to me. Daddy. Lily sobbed, scrambling out from beneath Marcus's protective embrace. Her small hands pushed at his chest, and Marcus's body rolled limply to the side. The sky tilted at a sickening angle. The boy. He saved me. Daddy, he's bleeding so much. Marcus tried to speak, to tell them he was fine, that what mattered was Lily being safe. But his tongue felt thick and useless, swollen to 3 times its normal size. The words tangled in his throat and died there, unspoken. Faces swam into view. Reaper's weathered features twisted with something between fury and anguish, Lily's tear-stained cheeks, strangers gathering in a circle, their mouths opening and closing, but their voices distant and underwater. Someone call 911. Reaper's command split the air with military precision. His massive hands moved to Marcus's wound, applying pressure. The pain exploded fresh and blinding, so intense that Marcus's back arched off the concrete. A scream tore from his throat, animal and raw. Stay with me, kid. You hear me? Stay with me. Don't you dare die on me. Marcus's eyes found Lily through the haze. She clutched her father's leather vest with both hands, her small body shaking violently. Blood, Marcus's blood, stained the sleeve of her pink jacket. But she was standing. She was breathing. Her chest rose and fell with panicked sobs. She was alive. Worth it, Marcus thought as the darkness finally swallowed him whole, pulling him down into a cold, empty place where the pain couldn't follow. The last thing he heard was Reaper's voice, rough and broken. "Hold on, son. Please hold on." Then nothing. The world ceased to exist. Somewhere in that nothing, Marcus drifted. He dreamed of his mother, not the hollow-eyed woman she'd become at the end, but the mother from before. The one who'd sung him lullabies and made pancakes shaped like Mickey Mouse. She smiled at him from very far away, and Marcus tried to reach for her, but the distance between them was impossibly vast. "Not yet, baby," she whispered. "Not yet." The world returned in fragments. Beeping. Steady and mechanical, like a metronome marking time. The sterile smell of disinfectant burning in his nostrils. Something plastic over his face, an oxygen mask, pushing air into his reluctant lungs. Voices speaking in hushed, urgent tones somewhere beyond his closed eyelids. Pain, but distant now, muted by chemicals flowing through his veins. Marcus's eyelids felt like they'd been glued shut, each lash weighted down with lead. But he forced them open anyway, fighting against exhaustion that threatened to drag him back under. White ceiling tiles, fluorescent lights humming overhead. A private hospital room, nicer than any place he'd slept in 8 months. Better than the abandoned warehouse where he'd been camping. Better than the shelter that always smelled like urine and despair. And 4 dripped clear fluid into his arm. Bandages wrapped his chest so tight he could barely breathe, each inhalation requiring conscious effort. More wires connected him to machines that tracked his heartbeat, his oxygen levels, his blood pressure, monitoring whether he'd continue existing moment by moment. He was alive. The realization hit him with surprising force. Kids like him didn't usually get second chances. The streets had taught him that lesson over and over. Invisible, disposable, forgotten. When homeless people died, nobody investigated too hard. They became statistics, Jane and John Does, buried in unmarked graves. But here he was, in a real bed with clean sheets and machines keeping track of his heartbeat like it actually mattered. Movement caught his eye. A nurse in pale blue scrubs adjusted something on one of the monitors, her movements practiced and efficient. She had kind eyes, Marcus noticed. The kind that crinkled at the corners when she smiled. She noticed he was awake, and those eyes widened. "Oh, you're up. Let me get the doctor." "Wait." Marcus's voice came out as a raspy whisper, his throat raw like he'd been screaming. Maybe he had been, during surgery. "The girl. Lily. Is she? Drop a comment. Where are you watching from? Let us know." The nurse's expression softened immediately, transforming her professional mask into something genuinely warm. "She's fine. Not a scratch on her, thanks to you." She squeezed his hand gently, her fingers cool against his fevered skin. "You're a very brave young man. The doctor said you're lucky to be alive. The bullet missed your lung by millimeters." Brave. The word felt foreign, like clothing meant for someone else. Marcus had always thought of himself as a coward. Running from fights, hiding from police, too scared to ask child services for help because foster care horror stories kept him awake at night. But maybe throwing yourself in front of bullets earned you a different word. Maybe that was the dividing line between coward and hero. The nurse left to fetch the doctor, her shoes squeaking on the polished linoleum. Marcus stared at the ceiling, exhaustion pulling at him like riptide. His shoulder throbbed despite whatever painkillers they'd pumped into his system. Every breath sent sharp reminders through his chest that he'd been shot, that a piece of metal had torn through his body at hundreds of feet per second. But Lily was alive. That was all that mattered. That had to be enough. A sound filtered through the window, low and distant at first, then growing into something that made the glass rattle in its frame like teeth chattering. Motorcycles. Dozens of them. No, more than dozens. Marcus turned his head toward the window, ignoring the spike of pain that lanced down his spine. Through the 4th-floor glass, he could see the hospital parking lot below spreading out like a concrete ocean. His breath caught in his damaged throat. They kept coming. Wave after wave of motorcycles rolling into the lot like an invading army, like locusts descending on a field. Leather vests caught the late afternoon sun. Chrome glinted and flashed, almost blinding. The Hells Angels skull logo, that grinning death's head with wings, repeated across a sea of broadbacks. 20 bikes became 50. 50 became 100. Still they came, engines rumbling in a bass note that Marcus felt in his bones. Nurses rushed past his door, their calm professionalism cracking into alarm. Security guards spoke urgently into radios, their hands moving to belts where weapons might be holstered. The steady rumble of engines surrounded the building like rising floodwater, a sound that bypassed the ears and resonated straight in the chest cavity. Marcus's heart rate spiked. The monitor beside his bed beeped faster, the line jumping erratically. His palms grew slick with sweat despite the hospital's aggressive air conditioning. Why were they here? What did they want? He'd saved one of their own, sure, but this wasn't gratitude. Gratitude was a thank you card and maybe some flowers. This was something else entirely. Something that made hospital staff lock doors and patients peer nervously from windows with faces pale as paper. 200 motorcycles now. Marcus counted them, his mind clinging to numbers because numbers made sense when nothing else did. 200 Hells Angels surrounding a hospital was not normal, was not safe, was not. Footsteps approached his room, heavy boots on linoleum, each step deliberate and purposeful. More than one set, many more. The door swung open with enough force to make it bang against the doorstop. Reaper filled the doorway, and for the first time, Marcus understood viscerally why they called him that. He wasn't just a man. He was a force of nature compressed into human form. His face was an unreadable mask of scars and hard years, each line telling stories of violence survived. His leather vest hung open over a black t-shirt that revealed arms covered in tattoos. Skulls wreathed in flames, dates that probably marked deaths, names of fallen brothers, a snake being strangled by skeletal hands. His eyes, steel gray and cold as winter, locked onto Marcus with an intensity that made the boy want to disappear into the mattress. Behind him, the hallway was packed with more Hells Angels. Dozens of them, shoulder to shoulder, silent as gravestones. Watching, waiting, their faces hard and unforgiving, marked by violence and loyalty in equal measure. Not one of them smiled. Reaper took 3 steps into the room. Each footfall seemed to echo despite the carpeted floor. Marcus's throat went dry as bone. His heart hammered so hard the monitor's beeping became frantic. This was it. The moment the fairy tale ended and reality crashed back in like a freight train. Maybe the club didn't want witnesses. Maybe saving Lily had been seen as interference in something bigger, something Marcus couldn't understand. Maybe they'd come to finish what the shooter started. The biker stopped beside the bed, towering over Marcus like a mountain of leather and muscle. His massive hand reached out, moving toward Marcus's throat. Marcus flinched and immediately hated himself for showing fear, for being weak when he'd been brave just hours ago. But Reaper didn't strike. His scarred hand, covered in tattoos and old burn marks, landed gently on Marcus's uninjured shoulder. The touch was surprisingly tender, almost paternal. When he spoke, his voice was rough with emotion Marcus hadn't expected, thick with something that sounded suspiciously like tears being held back. "You saved my daughter's life, kid." Marcus swallowed hard, his Adam's apple bobbing against his damaged throat. "Is she okay?" "Not a scratch." Reaper's jaw clenched so hard Marcus heard his teeth grind together. A single tear traced down his weathered cheek, cutting through the road dust and disappearing into his gray-streaked beard. "You took bullets meant for her. A 12-year-old kid with nothing, no family, no home, no reason to give a damn about anyone. And you threw yourself into gunfire for my little girl. Marcus's voice cracked like breaking glass. "I couldn't let her die. She's always nice to me. She waves every Tuesday. Like I'm a real person, not just," he couldn't finish. "Not just trash. Not just another invisible homeless kid waiting to become a statistic." Reaper's expression shifted. Something dangerous flickered behind his eyes. not directed at Marcus, but at someone else. Something that promised violence and retribution, that spoke of bodies buried in desert graves and debts paid in blood. He reached into his vest pocket and pulled out a photograph, placing it face down on Marcus's bedside table with deliberate care. "Your family now," Reaper said quietly, his voice dropping to something almost intimate. "The club voted. Unanimous. You're under Hell's Angels' protection. But family means something in our world, kid. Family means enemies inherit your wars. Family means the people who want us dead now want you dead too." Marcus's stomach dropped. His mouth went dry. "I don't understand." Reaper's steel-gray eyes bored into him with an intensity that felt like being X-rayed. "I need to ask you something, and I need the truth. Complete truth. Lives depend on it, yours included." Marcus nodded, fear coiling in his gut like a living thing with teeth. Reaper flipped the photograph over with one thick finger. Marcus's eyes tracked downward to the image, a grainy surveillance photo, black and white, printed on glossy paper. A man with a snake tattoo curling up his neck, the reptile's fangs disappearing behind his ear. Dead eyes that reflected no light, no humanity. A cruel smile that Marcus had tried so hard to forget, that haunted him through 8 months of nightmares. His blood turned to ice water in his veins. His hands began to shake uncontrollably, rattling the foreline. His breath came in short, panicked gasps that made his wounded chest scream in protest. The hospital room spun sickeningly, tilting on an axis that shouldn't exist. "Recognize him?" Reaper asked, his voice deadly calm. Marcus's hands clutched the bedsheets so hard his knuckles went white. His entire body trembled now, shock and recognition and terror mixing into something that threatened to drown him. Because he did recognize that face. He'd seen it in his nightmares for 8 months, standing over his mother's body the night she overdosed. The man who'd smiled while she died. The man who'd looked at 12-year-old Marcus and said, "Run, little rat. Run before I decide you're a loose end." That's... Marcus choked on the words, his voice breaking into pieces. Tears burned his eyes, but he blinked them back furiously. "That's the man who killed my mom." Reaper's face hardened into something carved from granite. Behind him, the Hell's Angels in the hallway shifted, leather creaking, chains rattling. The temperature in the room seemed to drop 10 degrees. "His name is Vincent Moreno," Reaper said quietly. "He's the enforcer for the Serpents. A rival gang that's been trying to push us out of Oakland for 2 years. And kid," his hand tightened on Marcus's shoulder, "he wasn't trying to kill my daughter today. He was trying to kill you." The words hung in the air like poison gas, seeping into Marcus's lungs with every shallow breath. Vincent Moreno wasn't hunting Lily. He was hunting a 12-year-old homeless boy who'd watched his mother die and had nowhere left to run. Marcus's mind reeled, trying to process what that meant. The black sedan hadn't been random gang violence. It had been targeted, calculated, personal. "I don't," Marcus's voice cracked. "Why would he want me dead? I'm nobody." Reaper's expression darkened. "You witnessed something 8 months ago? Something the Serpents can't afford to have surface." He pulled a chair close to the hospital bed, its legs scraping against tile. "Your mother, Maria Santos, she was one of their dealers. But she got sloppy, started skimming product, feeding her own habit instead of making them money." Marcus flinched at his mother's name. Maria Santos. Once upon a time, she'd been mom. She'd been Sunday morning cartoons and birthday cakes shaped like dinosaurs. Then the drugs had eaten her alive from the inside, turning her into a stranger wearing his mother's face. "Moreno came to collect a debt," Reaper continued, his voice low and measured. "But you were there that night. You saw his face. You saw what he did. That makes you a witness to murder, kid. And witnesses don't survive long in our world." The memory crashed over Marcus like a wave. His mother's apartment, the smell of chemicals and decay, the shouting. He'd hidden in the closet like she'd taught him, pressing his eye to the crack between the door and frame. He'd seen everything. Moreno's snake tattoo stretching as he grabbed his mother's throat. The needle he'd forced into her arm, filled with something that made her eyes roll back. The smile on his face as she convulsed and died. "I never told anyone," Marcus whispered. "I was too scared. I just ran." Doesn't matter. Reaper's jaw clenched. The serpents operate on one principle: eliminate all threats. You being alive is a loose and they can't afford. They've been searching for you for 8 months. Today they found you. Marcus's stomach twisted into knots. So Lily getting shot would have just been, what? Collateral damage. Bait. The word came from the doorway. Another Hell's Angel stepped forward, older than Reaper, with silver in his beard and a scar bisecting his left eyebrow. They knew you'd be on 5th Street. They knew you had a soft spot for the kid. They gambled you'd do something stupid like play hero. Tank's right, Reaper confirmed. Moreno knows how to manipulate people. He counted on your conscience getting you killed. His steel gray eyes softened slightly. But what he didn't count on was you actually succeeding. Or me arriving in time to see which direction he fled. Or my daughter remembering enough details to ID the vehicle. Marcus processed this information slowly, his pain medication fogged brain struggling to keep up. So what happens now? The question hung in the air for 3 long heartbeats. Reaper stood, his massive frame blocking out the fluorescent lights overhead. Now, you're under Hell's Angels' protection. 200 brothers out there in that parking lot. Every single one of them ready to die before they let the serpents touch you. But I didn't ask for. You saved my daughter's life. Reaper cut him off, his voice sharp as broken glass. That creates a debt. In our world, debts get paid. You protected my family, so my family protects you. It's not negotiable. Marcus wanted to argue, wanted to say he'd just done what anyone would do. But the words died in his throat because he knew they weren't true. Dozens of people had walked past him on those streets for 8 months. No one had protected him. No one had cared whether he lived or died. Until today, a commotion erupted in the hallway. Raised voices, a security guard trying to maintain order. Then a small figure pushed through the wall of leather-clad bikers, moving with the determination only a 7-year-old could muster. Daddy. Lily's voice pierced through the tension. Let me through. Reaper turned, his hard expression melting instantly. Baby, you shouldn't be. But Lily was already past him, her small legs carrying her to Marcus's bedside. Her eyes were red-rimmed from crying, her blonde curls disheveled. She clutched a piece of paper in both hands, crumpled from her tight grip. You saved me, she said simply, looking up at Marcus with an intensity that made his heart ache. The bad man tried to hurt me, and you stopped him. You got hurt because of me. No. Marcus shook his head, ignoring the pain the movement caused. I got hurt because I wanted to. Because you didn't deserve what was coming. Lily climbed onto the chair Reaper had vacated, making herself tall enough to see Marcus properly. She unfolded the paper, a drawing made with crayons, depicting a stick figure boy with a cape standing in front of a smaller stick figure girl. Hearts floated around them in red crayon. At the top, in uneven letters, My hero Marcus. If something like this happened near you, wouldn't you want to know first? Like and subscribe now. Marcus felt something crack inside his chest that had nothing to do with bullet wounds. When was the last time someone had called him a hero? When was the last time anyone had drawn him a picture, included him in their world, made him feel like he mattered? Thank you, he managed, his voice thick with emotions he couldn't name. Lily smiled, that innocent expression transforming her tear-stained face into pure sunshine. Daddy says you're going to live with us now. Is that true? Marcus's eyes shot to Reaper, questions exploding in his mind. The massive biker crossed his arms, his expression unreadable. Can't protect you if you're living on the streets, kid. The serpents have eyes everywhere. You'll stay at my place until we figure out a permanent solution. I can't, Marcus started. I don't want to be a burden. You think taking in a 12-year-old who took bullets for my daughter is a burden? Reaper's eyebrow arched. Kid, you've got a lot to learn about family. About what it means to be part of something bigger than yourself. Tank stepped forward from the doorway. The club's already voting on it. By the time you're discharged, it'll be official. You'll be under Hell's Angels' protection as an honorary prospect. Not full patch, you're too young for that. But protected. Provided for. Safe. Safe. The word felt foreign. Marcus had forgotten what safety felt like. 8 months of looking over his shoulder, of sleeping with one eye open, of knowing any moment could be his last. And now these dangerous men, Criminals, by most definitions, were offering him sanctuary. Why? Marcus whispered. Why do all this for me? Reaper's expression softened. He sat on the edge of the hospital bed, careful not to jostle Marcus's injuries. You know what my daughter said to me after the paramedics took you away? His voice grew rough with emotion. She said, Daddy, that boy is all alone, and he still saved me. We have to save him back. Marcus felt tears burning his eyes. He blinked them back furiously, refusing to cry in front of these hardened men. 7 years old, Reaper continued, and she understands loyalty better than most adults. You showed her what real courage looks like, what sacrifice means. I'll be damned if I let the serpents erase that lesson by putting you in the ground. Lily reached out and took Marcus's hand, her small fingers warm against his cold skin. You're my best friend now, she announced with the absolute certainty only children possess. Best friends don't leave each other. Before Marcus could respond, Tank's phone buzzed. He pulled it out, his expression darkening as he read the screen. Boss, we've got movement. Serpents spotted 3 blocks from the hospital. 6 bikes, all wearing colors. The temperature in the room plummeted. Reaper stood slowly, his entire demeanor shifting from protective father to predator. How many of our guys outside? 200 and counting, Tank replied. More arriving every 10 minutes. Word spread fast. Good. Reaper's voice dropped to something cold and lethal. Let them come. Let them see what happens when they threaten Hell's Angels' family. Marcus's heart hammered against his ribs. They're coming here? Now. They're testing us, Tank explained. Seeing if we're serious about protection. Trying to gauge our numbers and response time. Reaper moved to the window, peeling back the curtain. Marcus followed his gaze to the parking lot below. The sea of motorcycles had organized itself into defensive positions. Bikers stood in groups, leather vests bearing the Hell's Angels insignia, some with their hands resting casually on concealed weapons. They looked like an army preparing for war. What happens if they attack? Marcus asked, his voice small. Reaper let the curtain fall. He turned back to Marcus, his steel-gray eyes burning with an intensity that made the boy's breath catch. Then Oakland sees what happens when someone threatens a Hell's Angels family. Then we paint 5th Street red. The casual way he said it, like discussing weather instead of mass violence, sent chills down Marcus's spine. Tank's phone buzzed again. He answered, listened for 30 seconds, then ended the call. They're circling. Haven't committed yet. Just watching. Let them watch, Reaper said quietly. Every minute they wait is another 10 brothers arriving. By midnight, we'll have 500 bikes surrounding this hospital. They know the math. They know they can't win. Lily squeezed Marcus's hand tighter. Don't worry, she whispered. My daddy's the toughest person in the whole world. He won't let anyone hurt you. Marcus looked at this little girl who barely knew him, offering comfort with the absolute faith children have before the world teaches them doubt. Then he looked at Reaper, this terrifying man who'd built his reputation on violence, but cried over his daughter's safety. Then at Tank and the wall of leather-clad bikers visible through the doorway, all standing guard over a homeless kid they'd never met before today. Why me? Marcus asked again, needing to understand. Of all the people you could protect, all the causes you could fight for, why am I worth starting a war? Reaper's expression softened. He placed one massive hand on Marcus's uninjured shoulder. Because 8 months ago, when your world ended, you didn't become bitter. You didn't become cruel. You stayed human enough to risk everything for a little girl you barely knew. That kind of heart is rare, kid. Worth protecting. Worth fighting for. Tank's phone erupted with another call. This time when he answered, his entire body went rigid. Say that again. He listened, his face draining of color. How many? Another pause. Jesus Christ. Reaper turned sharply. What? Tank lowered the phone, his voice grim. The serpents just made their move. But they're not attacking the hospital. They hit the clubhouse on Morrison Street. Firebombed it. 3 of our guys were inside. The words detonated like grenades in the small hospital room. Reaper's face transformed into something inhuman, all pretense of civilization stripped away. Survivors? 2 critical. 1, Tank's voice broke. 1 didn't make it out. It was smoke. The name meant nothing to Marcus, but he watched Reaper's reaction, watched this mountain of a man absorb the news like a physical blow. His fists clenched so hard his knuckles went white. A vein pulsed in his temple. When he spoke, his voice was desert dry and twice as deadly. Get Lily to a safe location. Marcus too, the moment doctors clear him for transport. Full guard detail, 20 brothers minimum. No one in or out without my personal authorization. And you? Tank asked, though his tone suggested he already knew the answer. Reaper's smile was a terrible thing to witness. Me? I'm going to have a conversation with the serpents. About boundaries. About consequences. He looked down at Lily. Baby, I need you to go with Uncle Tank now. Can you do that for Daddy? Lily's lower lip trembled. You're going to fight the bad men. I'm going to make sure they never threaten you again, Reaper corrected gently. He kissed her forehead. Be brave, little warrior. Like Marcus. As Tank ushered Lily toward the door, she looked back at Marcus one last time. Don't die, she called out. You promised to be my best friend. Then they were gone, and Marcus was alone with Reaper and the sound of motorcycles revving outside like mechanical thunder announcing the apocalypse. This is because of me, Marcus said quietly. They attacked your clubhouse because you're protecting me. Reaper's eyes met his. They attacked because they're desperate. Because they know the moment you testify about what you saw 8 months ago, their enforcer goes to prison for life. This was always going to happen, kid. You just gave us a reason to finally end it. Through the window, the sound of engines multiplied. More Hell's Angels arriving. An army assembling. Reaper moved toward the door, then paused. Marcus, what you did today, that took more courage than most men show in their entire lives. Rest now. Heal. Because when you're strong enough, I'm going to teach you how to fight back. How to survive in a world that wants you dead. How to be more than a victim. Then he was gone, leaving Marcus alone with machines beeping and the distant rumble of war preparing to begin. Outside, beneath his 4th-floor window, 200 motorcycles roared to life in perfect unison. The war for Oakland had officially started. And Marcus, a 12-year-old homeless boy who'd only wanted to save a little girl's life, sat at the center of it all, wondering if his act of heroism had just doomed everyone he'd come to care about. The smell of smoke clung to Reaper when Marcus saw him again. It was hours later, though in the timeless haze of hospital lights and morphine drips. It could have been minutes or days. Marcus had drifted in and out of uneasy sleep, nightmares of his mother's death blending with the memory of bullets and Lily's screams. Every time he jolted awake, he half expected to see Vincent Moreno standing over his bed with that snake tattoo twitching on his neck. Instead, the door opened and Reaper stepped in, shutting it firmly behind him. His knuckles were split and bloody. Soot streaked his face. There was a tear in his leather vest near the shoulder that hadn't been there before, as if someone had tried, and failed, to stab him. His eyes looked older, more tired, but beneath that exhaustion lurked something sharp and lethal. How bad was it? Marcus asked, his voice rough. Reaper didn't answer right away. He dragged the visitor's chair closer and dropped into it heavily, the metal frame creaking under his weight. For a long moment, he just stared at Marcus, as if measuring how much truth the boy could handle. They hit the clubhouse hard, he finally said. Firebombs through the windows, doors chained from the outside. It wasn't an attack. His mouth twisted. It was a message. Marcus swallowed. Because of me. Because of us, Reaper corrected. The second I decided you were family, the lines got redrawn. The serpents know what that means. They're trying to scare us into cutting you loose. Make you someone else's problem. Or no one's problem at all. Marcus stared at his bandaged chest. They killed one of your men. Smoke. Reaper's jaw tightened. 20 years in the club. Survived 3 turf wars, 2 stints in prison. He dies because a coward throws a bottle through a window and locks the door from the outside. The room felt smaller, the air heavier. What happens now? Marcus asked. Reaper leaned forward, resting his forearms on his knees. Now things get ugly. There's no more pretending this is just business. They crossed a line when they went after Lily. They burned the line down when they hit our home. Marcus thought of Lily's drawing, My Hero Marcus, and felt sick. She doesn't know, does she? About smoke? About the clubhouse? Reaper shook his head. She knows Daddy's friends got hurt. She doesn't know how bad yet. I'll tell her when I have to. His gaze hardened. What she does know is this. You're alive because we got you to this hospital in time. And you're alive because that bullet missed your lung by less than an inch. That's not luck to her. That's purpose. Marcus shifted, wincing as pain flared. What purpose? Reaper pointed at the photograph still on the bedside table. Vincent Moreno's dead eyes frozen in grainy black and white. Him. The serpents. All of it. You're the only living witness to what he did to your mom. The only person who can describe his face, his voice, his snake tattoo in a courtroom. To them, you're not just a kid. You're a loaded gun pointed at their entire operation. The idea of court felt unreal, like something that happened in movies, not to homeless kids who slept behind diners. You think the police would even listen to me? Marcus whispered. I'm nobody. Reaper's lips curled into something between a smirk and a snarl. The cops listen when there's enough noise. When there's pressure. When a certain kind of attention lands on their front doorstep. He jerked his head toward the window. 200 Hells Angels surrounding a hospital makes noise. Reporters are already sniffing around. Local gang protects boy who saved child from drive-by. That's a headline they like. Marcus imagined cameras, microphones, strangers asking questions about his mother, about the worst night of his life. His stomach twisted. I don't know if I can, he trailed off. Reaper studied him quietly. You already walked into gunfire for someone you barely knew. Don't tell me you can't stand in front of a judge and tell the truth. Marcus closed his eyes. He could still see Moreno's smile as his mother's breathing slowed. Hear the words, run, little rat. If I talk, they'll just try to kill me again. They'll try, Reaper agreed. That's why you won't be alone. You'll have a wall of leather and steel between you and them. And if that's not enough, his eyes narrowed. Then we settle it another way. Silence settled between them, thick and heavy. Where's Lily? Marcus asked suddenly. Tank took her somewhere safe, right? Reaper nodded. Safe house outside the city. Only patch members know the location. Tank's with her. She hasn't stopped drawing pictures of you, by the way. Something softer crossed his face. She keeps telling everyone, he's my hero. Heroes don't die. You made her believe that. The weight of that trust pressed down on Marcus's chest harder than any bandage. He stared at his scraped, scabbed hands. Before all this, I thought my life didn't matter. If I disappeared, nobody would notice. Now people are getting killed. Clubhouses burned. All because I existed in the wrong place at the wrong time. Reaper's reply was immediate. No. Because Vincent Moreno decided he could play God with people's lives. Because the serpents decided fear was cheaper than justice. He leaned in closer. Don't ever blame yourself for someone else's evil. You hear me? Marcus nodded, but doubt lingered at the edges. Reaper sat back, exhaling slowly. We're calling a full church tonight. Church, Marcus echoed. Club meeting, Reaper explained. All patched members. We vote on how far we're willing to go to protect you and Lily. How hard we hit back. Some of the brothers think you're a liability we can't afford. Others think you're the reason we finally finished this war instead of letting it drag on. Marcus's chest tightened. What if they vote against me? Reaper's stare was steady. Then they vote against me. Because I'm not abandoning you. Not after what you did for my daughter. They want to stay in this club. They'll have to accept that. Marcus realized suddenly that Reaper was risking more than just bodies and bullets. He was risking his position, his legacy, his power, for a homeless kid with nothing to offer but a painful memory. That's crazy, Marcus murmured. Reaper actually smiled, a weary, ghostly thing. Welcome to family, kid. It's messy. Outside, engines rumbled again, more bikes arriving, the sound vibrating through the walls. Marcus imagined the parking lot filled to overflowing, chrome and leather and roaring defiance. They won't stop, will they? He asked softly. The serpents. Not until one side is gone. No, Reaper said. They won't. And that's why what you do next matters. Marcus frowned. What can I do? I'm stuck in a hospital bed. Reaper tapped his temple. You can remember. Every detail. The apartment. The night your mom died. What Moreno said. How he moved. Anything that proves it wasn't an overdose, but murder. The more you remember, the harder it is for them to twist the story. The idea of going back there in his mind made Marcus feel like he was standing on the edge of a cliff, looking down at Blackwater. It hurts, he admitted. Every time I think about it. Pain's part of this, Reaper said quietly. Part of healing too. You want out from under this. Want Lily safe? Want kids like you to stop ending up in unmarked graves because someone decided they were disposable? He shrugged. Then we walked through the fire. Together. Marcus stared at him. This man could have told him to disappear. Could have handed him a bus ticket out of town and called it kindness. Instead, he was inviting him into the center of a war. If I do this, Marcus said slowly, if I remember everything, if I talk, does it really change anything? Reaper's answer came without hesitation. Yeah, it changes everything. The conviction in his voice settled something inside Marcus that had been shaking for months. He took a slow breath. Okay, then, I'll try. I'll remember. Reaper nodded once, like a general acknowledging a soldier's decision. That's all I'm asking. For a moment, Marcus imagined a different life. One where his mother had gotten clean, where there'd been no serpents, no bullets, no Lily on the sidewalk. Then he pushed the thought away. That life was gone. This was what he had now. Scars, enemies, and a biker who decided he was worth bleeding for. Reaper rose to his feet. I've got to get back downstairs. Keep the brothers in line. Keep the cops from panicking. Keep the press from turning this into a circus. He moved toward the door, then paused with his hand on the handle. Marcus. Yeah. When the doctor clears you, we're moving you to the safe house with Lily. You'll be under guard. You'll hate it, but you'll be alive. And while you're there, he gave a small, grim smile. We'll start teaching you how to stop being prey. Marcus's pulse quickened. You mean, like, fight? I mean survive, Reaper said. How to read danger before it sees you. How to disappear when you need to. How to stand your ground when you can't. He opened the door, then looked back one last time. Get some rest, kid. The next time you see Vincent Moreno's face, I don't want you to freeze. I want you to remember you're not alone anymore. The door closed behind him with a soft click. Marcus stared at the ceiling, listening to the distant thunder of engines, the quiet beeping of machines, the echo of Reaper's words. Not alone anymore. The idea felt terrifying and comforting all at once. He turned his head toward the window. Somewhere out there, beyond the glass and the concrete and the smoke of a burned clubhouse, Lily was drawing pictures of him, calling him hero, waiting for him to keep a promise he'd never spoken out loud, that he wouldn't leave her alone in a world full of men like Vincent Moreno. Marcus swallowed, his throat tight. If he walked away from this, if he refused to remember, refused to speak, refused to fight, then Smoke had died for nothing. The clubhouse had burned for nothing. Lily's belief in him would be a lie. He couldn't live with that. Far below, a fresh wave of motorcycles rolled into the parking lot, their engines blending into one continuous roar. Marcus closed his eyes and forced himself back into the apartment from 8 months ago, into the smell of cheap dope and spilled beer, into the sound of his mother's laughter before it turned into choking. This time, he didn't look away. And somewhere in the distance, as the war between Hell's Angels and Serpents edged closer to the point of no return, a 12-year-old boy made a choice that would change all of their lives. 3 days later, Marcus left the hospital in the back of a windowless van surrounded by 6 Hell's Angels who looked like they'd been carved from stone. The doctors had cleared him reluctantly, warning about infection risks and damaged tissue that needed time to heal. But Reaper had made it clear. Staying in one place too long made Marcus a stationary target. The Serpents knew which room he was in. They knew his floor. Sooner or later, they'd find a way past hospital security. Better to disappear. The van drove for what felt like hours, winding through streets Marcus didn't recognize, doubling back on itself, taking routes designed to shake any tail. No one spoke. The silence pressed against Marcus's eardrums like deep water. He sat wedged between Tank and another biker they called Wrench, a man with a shaved head and burn scars crawling up his neck like angry vines. Finally, the van turned onto a dirt road. Gravel crunched under tires. Trees closed in on both sides, thick enough to block out most of the afternoon sun. They drove for another 10 minutes before the safe house appeared. A two-story cabin set back in the woods, isolated and unremarkable. Perfect for hiding. The van stopped. Doors opened. Marcus climbed out carefully, favoring his wounded shoulder. The air smelled different here. Pine and earth instead of exhaust and concrete. Birds called from somewhere in the canopy. It was the kind of quiet that made city kids nervous. This way, Tank grunted, leading Marcus up wooden steps to the front door. Inside, the cabin was sparse but functional. Worn furniture. A kitchen with outdated appliances. Curtains drawn tight across every window. And sitting cross-legged on the living room floor, surrounded by crayons and construction paper, was Lily. She looked up when the door opened. Her face exploded into pure joy. "Marcus!" She scrambled to her feet and ran at him full speed. "Careful!" Tank barked, but Lily was already throwing her arms around Marcus's waist. Pain shot through his shoulder, but Marcus didn't pull away. He rested his good hand on her blonde curls, feeling her small body shake with relieved sobs against him. "I thought," her voice was muffled against his shirt, "I thought they might hurt you again before Daddy brought you here." "I'm okay," Marcus lied, because the truth, that he hurt everywhere and couldn't lift his left arm without wanting to scream, wouldn't help either of them. "See? Still in one piece." Lily pulled back, her green eyes red-rimmed but fierce. "Good. Because I made you 17 new drawings, and you have to look at all of them." Despite everything, Marcus smiled. 17. "She's been productive," came a voice from the hallway. Beth emerged from what looked like the kitchen, wiping her hands on a dish towel. The waitress from Rosie's diner, the one who'd snuck Marcus pancakes every Tuesday, looked tired but relieved to see him standing. "You gave us all a scare, honey." Marcus blinked in surprise. "What are you doing here?" Beth's expression darkened. "Reaper pulled me out of my apartment 2 days ago. Said the serpents knew I'd been feeding you. That I was on their list." She crossed her arms, the dish towel hanging limp in her grip. "Apparently kindness is a crime worth kidnapping over." Tank moved to the window, peering through a gap in the curtains. "You weren't safe there? They were watching your place. Waiting for leverage." Marcus's stomach dropped. "Because of me." "Because they're monsters," Beth corrected sharply. "Don't you dare take responsibility for evil men doing evil things." It was almost word for word what Reaper had said. Marcus wondered if they'd rehearsed it, or if that's just what good people told themselves when the world caught fire around them. Lily tugged on Marcus's hand. "Come see my drawings. I made one of you and Daddy and me. We're a family." The word hit Marcus harder than the bullet had. Family. He let Lily pull him to the living room floor, where she'd spread out her artwork like a gallery exhibition. Crayon stick figures with enormous smiles. A house with a red door and flowers. 3 people holding hands under a yellow sun that took up half the page. "That's you." Lily pointed to the tallest stick figure. "And that's me. And that's Daddy. We all live together and nobody's ever sad." Marcus stared at the drawing, at the crude representation of a life he'd never imagined having. "It's perfect," he managed. Lily beamed. Then her expression shifted, becoming more serious than any 7-year-old should. "Daddy says bad men are looking for you. That's why we're hiding." Marcus nodded slowly. "Yeah, they are. Are you scared?" The question was so direct, so innocent, that Marcus couldn't lie. "Yeah, I'm scared." Lily considered this. Then she scooted closer, pressing her shoulder against his. "Me too. But Daddy says being scared is okay, as long as you don't let it make you run away from people who need you." Marcus looked down at this little girl who'd been thrust into the center of a gang war through no fault of her own, and felt something crack open in his chest. "Your dad's pretty smart." "He's the smartest," Lily agreed. "And the strongest. And he promised nobody's gonna hurt us. So I believe him. Most people don't know what's coming until it's too late. Like and subscribe so you're not caught off guard." Tank cleared his throat from his position by the window. "Kid, Lily. We need to go over some rules." Lily groaned. "Rules are boring." "Rules keep you breathing," Tank countered. "So pay attention." He moved to the center of the room, his presence commanding despite the domestic setting. "First rule, you don't go outside. Not for any reason. Not even if you hear something interesting. Not even if the house catches fire. You wait for one of us to give the all clear. Marcus nodded. Lily pouted but didn't argue. Second rule. You stay away from windows. Curtains stay closed. If you need light, use the lamps. Snipers don't need much, just a shadow moving behind glass. The casual mention of snipers made Marcus's skin crawl. Third rule. Tank continued. If we say run, you run. No questions. No hesitation. There's a tunnel in the basement that leads to the woods. You go through it, and you keep running until you hit the service road. There'll be a vehicle waiting. Keys in the visor. Marcus's mouth went dry. You really think they'll find us here? Tank's expression was grim. I think we've underestimated the serpents before. I won't make that mistake twice. He jerked his head toward the hallway. Beth will show you your room. Get settled. Rest while you can. As Tank returned to his watch position, Marcus followed Beth down the narrow hallway. Lily trailed behind, clutching two of her drawings. The room was small, a single bed, a dresser, a lamp, a window covered with blackout curtains. It looked like every cheap motel Marcus had ever seen in movies, except safer, quieter, lonelier. It's not much, Beth said apologetically, but it's yours. First time in a while you've had that, I'm guessing. Marcus thought about the warehouse where he'd been sleeping, about cardboard and newspaper for blankets. It's perfect. Beth's smile was sad. I'll bring you some food in a bit. You should rest. You look like death warmed over. She left, but Lily lingered in the doorway, her drawings clutched to her chest. Can I stay? She asked quietly. Just for a little while? Marcus didn't have the heart to say no. He sat on the edge of the bed, and Lily climbed up beside him, carefully avoiding his injured side. She spread the two drawings across the blanket. The first showed Marcus and Lily on a playground, swings and slides and sunshine. The second was darker, more chaotic. Black scribbles that might have been smoke. Red slashes that looked like fire. Stick figures lying on the ground. What's this one? Marcus asked, pointing to the dark drawing. Lily's voice went small. The bad place, where Daddy's friends got hurt. Her finger traced one of the fallen stick figures. That's Smoke. He used to let me sit on his motorcycle. He said I'd make a good biker when I grew up. Marcus's throat tightened. I'm sorry. Daddy says Smoke protected his family. That he was brave. Lily looked up at Marcus with eyes too old for her face. Like you. Marcus didn't feel brave. He felt like a 12-year-old kid who'd made one impulsive decision and dragged everyone he cared about into hell as a result. But looking at Lily, at her trust, her belief, her desperate need for him to be the hero she'd drawn in crayon, he couldn't say that out loud. Your dad's right, Marcus said instead. Smoke was brave, and he'd want you to be safe. Lily nodded solemnly. Then she leaned against Marcus's good shoulder, her small body warm and trusting. When this is over, can we get a dog? I always wanted a dog. We could name him Hero. Marcus smiled despite everything. Yeah, we can get a dog. They sat like that for a long time. A homeless boy and a biker's daughter, both too young to be carrying the weight of a gang war, both trying to believe in a future where dogs and playgrounds were possible. Downstairs, Tank's phone buzzed. Marcus heard the low rumble of conversation, the tone shifting from casual to urgent. Footsteps on the stairs. Tank appeared in the doorway, his expression dark. Lily, go to Beth, he said quietly. Lily looked between Tank and Marcus, fear flickering in her eyes. What's wrong? Now, sweetheart. She slid off the bed reluctantly, clutching her drawings. As she left, she looked back at Marcus. Don't go anywhere, okay? I won't, Marcus promised, though he had no idea if he could keep it. Tank waited until Lily's footsteps faded, then stepped into the room and closed the door. We've got a problem. Marcus's heart hammered. The serpents found us. Worse. Tank's jaw clenched. Someone talked. Inside the club. Reaper's calling an emergency church meeting tonight to root out who, but he paused. We have to assume the serpents know this location. Maybe not yet, but soon. The room felt like it was shrinking, the walls pressing in. How long do we have? Marcus whispered. Tank pulled back the curtain just enough to skin the tree line. Hours. Maybe less. Reaper's mobilizing everyone he can trust, but until we know who the leak is. He let the sentence hang. Marcus thought about the tunnel in the basement, the service road, keys in the visor. An escape plan built on the assumption that safety was temporary, that nowhere was truly safe. What do we do? He asked. Tank turned from the window, his scarred face set in hard lines. We wait. We watch. And if they come, he pulled a pistol from his waistband, checked the chamber, then set it on the dresser within Marcus's reach. We make them regret it. Marcus stared at the gun. He'd never held one before. Never wanted to. But looking at it now, black metal gleaming dully in the lamplight, he understood what Tank was really saying. The time for running was over. Outside, somewhere in the woods beyond the safe house, engines rumbled in the distance. Tank's expression hardened. Stay here. Don't open this door for anyone but me or Reaper. You understand? Marcus nodded, his mouth too dry to speak. Tank left, pulling the door shut behind him. Marcus sat on the edge of the bed, staring at the pistol on the dresser, listening to the sound of motorcycles growing closer. And for the first time since this all began, he wondered if saving Lily's life had been the beginning of his story or the end. The engines grew louder. They weren't distant anymore. They were close enough that the glass in Marcus's window trembled in its frame. Every rumble felt like a hand closing tighter around his throat. He sat rigid on the edge of the bed, eyes fixed on the pistol Tank had left on the dresser, the weight of it pressing on him even from across the room. Downstairs, a door slammed. Voices rose. Tank's low growl, Beth's sharp whisper, Lily's higher, frightened tone. Chairs scraped. Boots thudded across the wooden floor. The safe house, which had felt too quiet before, now felt too full of panic. Marcus stood up too fast. Pain stabbed through his shoulder, making his vision blur. He slapped a hand against the wall to steady himself, then forced his feet to move toward the dresser, toward the gun. His fingers hovered above it, trembling. He wasn't that kid. He'd never wanted to be that kid. The streets had taught him how to avoid fights, not start them. But the streets had never prepared him for this. For being hunted by a gang, for having a 7-year-old girl drawing him as a hero while men with guns closed in. His hand closed around the pistol. It was heavier than he expected. Cold. Real. The kind of real that didn't care how old you were or what you'd seen. The kind of real that made decisions permanent. He flicked the safety the way Tank had shown him earlier, the clicking sound loud in the small room. The engines cut off. Silence dropped over the woods like a blanket. No more birds. No more insects. Just stillness and the faint ringing in Marcus's ears. Then, a single knock at the front door downstairs. 3 beats. Calm. Polite. Marcus's heart slammed against his ribs. He moved to the bedroom door, cracking it just enough to see down the hallway. From here, he could hear Beth hissing something under her breath. Tank's voice came back, low and icy. That's far enough. A man's voice answered. Smooth. Confident. It carried easily up the stairs. Relax, Tank. If we wanted the house burned, you'd already be ashes. Marcus's blood went cold. He didn't know the voice, but he knew what it represented. Serpents. He eased the door open another inch. From the top of the stairs, Marcus could see the edge of the living room. Tank stood in front of the door, body angled sideways, one hand out of sight, probably on his gun. Beth was half hidden in the kitchen doorway, her eyes wide but jaw set. Lily was nowhere in sight. Marcus exhaled slowly. Good. Maybe Beth had already hidden her. Maybe Lily was in the basement, near the tunnel Tank had mentioned. The man on the porch continued, voice almost cheerful. We're just here to talk. No need to make this unpleasant. Tank snorted. You lit our clubhouse on fire with smoke inside. You passed unpleasant 2 days ago. A soft chuckle floated through the door. To be fair, he was never that pleasant to begin with. Something inside Tank snapped. Marcus watched his shoulders tense, his stance shift. Open the door, the man said. Let's be civilized. You can talk through the wood, Tank replied. A pause. Fine, the stranger said. We'll keep it simple. You have something that belongs to us. A loose end. A witness. A beat. A boy. Marcus's hand tightened around the pistol. He felt suddenly very visible, even hidden at the top of the stairs. Like the man on the porch could see through the walls and count every heartbeat. Tank stayed silent. Come on, the stranger coaxed. You know how this goes. He saw something he shouldn't have seen. Your boss scooped him up. Heroic, sure, but very inconvenient. The man's tone sharpened, steel beneath velvet. Hand him over, and this ends tonight. No more firebombs. No more bodies. Your little princess keeps drawing her pictures, and we all walk away. Princess. The word twisted Marcus's stomach. Lily. Tank laughed once, humorless. You really think Reaper's going to trade a kid for peace? I think Reaper has a daughter he loves, the stranger replied. And I think we all make sacrifices for love. Don't you? Silence again. Heavy. Waiting. Marcus's pulse thudded in his ears. Tank wouldn't do it. He couldn't. He'd been at the hospital. He'd seen Marcus bleeding out, Lily sobbing. He'd been the one to give Marcus the gun, the one to explain the tunnel, the one to say, we make them regret it. Tank's voice, when it came, was steady. Walk away, he said. Last chance. The stranger sighed. That's disappointing. Metal scraped outside. Not a gun, something heavier. A chain? A crowbar? The front window shattered. The explosion of glass was deafening. Shards sprayed across the living room like deadly rain. Beth screamed. Tank cursed. The next sound was even worse. The sharp crack of a gunshot. Marcus flinched, every nerve lit up. Then chaos descended. More windows shattered. Footsteps crashed up the porch steps. The door burst inward. Tank fired, once, twice. Someone outside roared in pain. Another gun answered. Splinters flew from the doorframe. Marcus jerked back from the stairwell, chest heaving. He clutched the pistol so tight his knuckles ached. Downstairs, Beth yelled, Lily. Basement. Run. Small feet pounded across the floor. A second later, another shot roared, followed by Beth's strangled cry. Marcus didn't think. He bolted from his room, pain forgotten. The world narrowed to the staircase and the sounds of people he cared about screaming. He thundered down the stairs, vision already swimming from the effort. At the bottom, he saw everything at once. Tank crouched behind an overturned couch, firing toward the doorway. 3 men in serpent's colors pushed into the house. Snake logo on their backs, guns in their hands. Beth on the floor, clutching her arm, blood seeping through her fingers. And Lily, frozen halfway between the kitchen and the basement door, eyes huge, body shaking. One of the serpents saw her. There she is, he shouted, guns swinging in her direction. Marcus didn't remember deciding to move. 1 second he was on the stairs. The next, he was between Lily and the gunman, panting, shaking, his own pistol raised with both hands. Leave her alone, he shouted. The room seemed to tilt. Time slow. The gunman, tattooed, scarred, eyes cold, smiled. Look at that, he drawled. The little hero again. Behind him, another man stepped into view. Snake tattoo curling up his neck. Dead eyes. That same cruel smile. Vincent Moreno. Marcus's fingers went numb. His breath hitched. The world dissolved into 2 nights 8 months apart. His mother gasping on the dirty apartment floor. Lily sobbing beneath him on the sidewalk. The needle. The gun. The same man, wearing the same amused expression, like people were just pieces in a game he was winning. Should have run faster, rat, Moreno said softly. Didn't I give you that chance? The gun in Marcus's hands trembled. Memories crashed into him. His mother whispering, hide, baby. Moreno's voice, run. The way the door had closed behind him as he bolted down the stairs, leaving his mother to die because he was too small, too scared, too helpless. Not this time. Marcus tightened his grip. His arm steadied. You killed my mom, he said, voice shaking but loud. Moreno's smile widened. Did I? You did, Marcus insisted. I saw you. I remember everything. He swallowed. And I'm not running anymore. For the first time, something flickered behind Moreno's eyes. Annoyance? Calculation? That's so, he said. He raised his gun. Tank roared. Marcus down. Marcus squeezed the trigger. The recoil jolted up his arm, shocking and violent. The blast deafened him. For a heartbeat, he saw nothing but muzzle flash and white light. Then sound and color crashed back. The serpent aiming for Lily dropped his weapon, screaming, clutching his shoulder. Blood stained his jacket. Tank used the opening, firing twice. The man went down, unmoving. Gunfire erupted everywhere. Beth crawled behind the kitchen counter. Lily bolted for the basement, finally breaking free from her paralysis. Moreno ducked behind the doorframe, laughing. "Not bad, Rat," he called. "But now I know you won't freeze. That means I shoot first next time." He fired blindly into the room, bullets chewing through drywall. Tank yanked Marcus behind the couch. "What the hell are you doing?" "Protecting her," Marcus gasped. His whole body trembled now, the adrenaline starting to burn off. "Like I did before." Tank glanced toward the hall where Lily had disappeared. "She made it to the basement." "Good. You're insane." The front door shuddered as more serpents pushed against it. Wood creaked. Hinges groaned. "They're going to overrun us," Tank muttered. A distant sound cut through the chaos. Engines. Not one. Not three. Dozens. The kind of roar that made glass hum and bones vibrate. Tank's head snapped toward the open window. About damn time. The serpents hesitated. Even Moreno paused, his head tilting. The engines grew louder. Closer. Then, from outside. "Reaper's here," someone shouted. Tires screeched. Metal slammed. Voices barked orders. The fight outside exploded, a cacophony of shouts, crashes, and more gunfire. The serpents in the doorway turned, suddenly caught between the battle outside and the resistance inside. Tank grabbed Marcus's shoulder. "Stay down. No matter what." He surged up from behind the couch, firing 3 controlled shots. One serpent fell. Another staggered back into the porch, clutching his leg. Moreno retreated to the edge of the porch, eyes scanning the yard. Marcus couldn't see Reaper from his angle, but he could hear him. That voice was unmistakable, even when wrapped in fury. "You picked the wrong house," Reaper bellowed. "You come for my brothers, I understand. You come for my daughter." His voice dropped, lethal. "Then I stopped counting bodies." The serpents tried to hold their ground. They failed. Hell's angels poured into the clearing like a flood, engines still rumbling, boots pounding, fists and guns and raw rage. They moved with frightening coordination, each man covering another. Each attack met with overwhelming force. Tank grabbed Marcus, hauling him to his feet. "Basement. Now. This part's not for you." Marcus's legs barely worked, but he stumbled toward the basement door. As he reached it, he looked back. Moreno stood at the edge of the porch, staring down at the chaos in the yard. For the first time, his amusement was gone. He met Marcus's eyes across the living room. "We'll finish this," Moreno mouthed. Then he bolted sideways, disappearing around the corner of the house. Tank cursed. "We'll get him," he growled. "One more at a time." Marcus yanked the basement door open and descended the stairs, his legs shaking. At the bottom, in the dim light of a single bulb, Lily huddled near the mouth of the tunnel, a rough opening in the foundation leading into darkness. Her eyes were huge. When she saw Marcus, she ran to him, colliding with his chest. "You're okay?" She sobbed. "I heard there were shots, I thought." "I'm okay," he rasped, though every nerve in his body screamed otherwise. He sank down beside her, back against the cool concrete wall. "You did good. You ran like Tank said." "I didn't want to leave you," she whispered. "Sometimes being brave is running when someone tells you to," he said. "So you can live long enough to fight later." She sniffed. "Did Daddy come?" Marcus smiled faintly. "Yeah, he came." Above them, the battle raged. The safe house shook twice, once with an explosion that rattled dust from the ceiling, once with something heavy crashing to the floor upstairs. Lily covered her ears. Marcus did too, pulling her closer, shielding her as much as his injured body allowed. Minutes stretched into an eternity. Then, slowly, the gunfire tapered off. Engines revved. Voices rose, not in anger, but in exhausted relief. Footsteps pounded down the basement stairs. Lily tensed, then relaxed when she saw who it was. "Daddy!" Reaper rushed across the basement, dropping to his knees and pulling Lily into a crushing embrace. Dust and blood streaked his face. His knuckles were fresh torn open. His vest was ripped again, a new slash across the patch on his back. "I told you to stay with Beth," he said, voice rough. "She told me to run," Lily replied, clinging to him. Reaper exhaled. "Good. She's smarter than me." His gaze shifted to Marcus. For a moment, Neither of them spoke. Then Reaper said, "Tank tells me you took a shot at a serpent in my living room." Marcus swallowed. He was pointing his gun at Lily. "I know what he was doing." Reaper's expression was unreadable. "And you stepped in front of her again." Marcus's hand tightened on Lily's shoulder. "She's family," he said quietly. Reaper stared at him for a long, heavy heartbeat. Then he held out his hand. "Not the way you grab someone. The way you offer them something." Marcus hesitated, then reached out with his good arm. Reaper clasped his hand, forearm to forearm, pulling him forward slightly. "Church voted," Reaper said. "Unanimous this time. You're not just under protection anymore. You're one of us. Prospect, when you're old enough to wear the cut. Brother, starting now." Marcus blinked. "But you stood your ground against Vincent Moreno," Reaper cut in. "You shot his man to protect my daughter. You didn't run." His voice lowered. "You did more today than some patch members did their first year. That means something." Lily looked between them, a smile beginning to break through her tears. "Does that mean Marcus is staying with us forever?" Reaper actually laughed, a rough, disbelieving sound. "If he wants to," he said. Marcus's chest tightened. Forever. He thought about the streets, about hunger, about sleeping in fear, about his mother's empty eyes, about the war outside and the blood spilled and Smoke's name whispered like a prayer and a warning. He thought about Lily's drawings. He thought about Beth being dragged into this, and Tank bleeding for people he could have walked away from. He thought about Vincent Moreno's promise. "We'll finish this." "I don't want to run anymore," Marcus said. "If I stay, I want to help end this. For real. So nobody else like me, like my mom, gets caught in the middle." Reaper's eyes softened. "Then we end it. Together." From upstairs, Tank called down, "Boss, cops are on their way. We've got 10 minutes before this turns into a circus." Reaper stood, lifting Lily effortlessly into one arm. He offered Marcus his other hand again. Marcus took it and let himself be pulled to his feet. As they climbed the stairs, Lily rested her head on Marcus's good shoulder. "You're still my hero," she murmured. He looked at her, at Reaper, at the lights spilling from the open basement door. "No," Marcus said. "We're each other's." They stepped into the wreckage of the living room, shattered glass, overturned furniture, blood stains already drying. Hell's Angels moved through the debris, checking on each other, gathering weapons, preparing for the next wave of problems that would come with sirens and flashing lights. Reaper squeezed Marcus's shoulder. "You remember what you saw 8 months ago?" Marcus thought of his mother, the needle, the snake tattoo. "I remember," he said. "Good," Reaper replied. "Because when this gets to court, you won't be alone on that stand. You'll have all of us behind you." The serpents tried to silence you. Instead, they gave you a microphone. Lily looked up at him. "Does that mean the bad men go away?" "One way or another," Reaper said. Marcus stepped to the broken window, looking out at the forest clearing filled with motorcycles. Chrome gleamed in the fading light. Men who'd arrived as soldiers moved now like survivors. Tired, battered, but unbroken. He saw Beth outside, her arm bandaged, talking to Tank. Saw other bikers clapping each other on the shoulder. Saw the place where Vincent Moreno had escaped, just out of reach. This wasn't over. But it wasn't the same story anymore, either. Marcus wasn't a kid hiding in a closet, listening to his mother die. He wasn't a nameless face on the street, invisible and ignored. He was Marcus. The boy who'd thrown himself in front of bullets, who'd faced the man who killed his mother and refused to run, who'd been claimed by a family that didn't share his blood, but shared his war. Sirens wailed in the distance. Reaper rested a hand on his shoulder. "You ready for what comes next?" Marcus took a breath, feeling fear and resolve battle in his chest. "No," he said honestly. Then, after a beat, "But I'll do it anyway." Reaper smiled, pride flickering in his eyes. "That's all courage ever is, kid." Lily slipped her small hand into Marcus's. Outside, the sun dipped lower, casting long shadows across the clearing. Inside, surrounded by broken glass and broken walls and people who had chosen him, Marcus realized something. The drive-by on 5th Street had started this. But it wouldn't be what defined him. What defined him would be this choice, right here. Standing his ground, telling the truth, fighting not just for himself, but for Lily, for Beth, for every kid who'd ever been told they didn't matter. And for the first time since his mother died, Marcus believed he might actually live long enough to see what life after the war looked like. He squeezed Lily's hand. "Let's go be brave," he said. Together, they stepped toward the open door, toward the sirens and the questions and the battles still to come. The war for Oakland wasn't over. But Marcus was done being prey. He walked into the fading light with his new family at his back, a target on his chest, and a future, not guaranteed, but finally, possibly his. And somewhere out there, in the gathering dark, Vincent Moreno realized too late that the scared little boy he'd tried to erase had become something far more dangerous. A survivor with nothing left to lose, and an army behind him.